Hi everyone, this is William from the Headphone Experience, and tonight I'm here with my full review of the Kennerton Odin. This is the new 2019 version of the Odin, which is basically, I believe, the older MK2 version, but with a different type of headband on it. And this is made by Kennerton Audio Equipment out of St. Petersburg, Russia. And I believe the retail price on this headphone is $21.75, and that would be in US dollars. This is a full-size, over-the-ear, open-back design, and it uses an 80mm planar magnetic driver. This headphone has an impedance of 40 ohms, a sensitivity of 104 decibels at 1 milliwatt. Kennerton claims a weight, and it depends on what type of wood you get, of anywhere from 620 to 658 grams on this headphone. And this pair, which is made of a wood called paddock, which has a very red color to it. This one weighs in at 643 grams on my kitchen scale, which is right in the middle of the weights given by Kennerton. Like I said, this is made of wood. It has real solid wood ear cups. These are not veneers. And the ear pads and the headband are made of real lambskin leather. The ear pads are tapered, which you can probably see here, thicker in the back and a little thinner in the front, which gives you a little bit of a forward angle to the drivers. And the grills are made of aluminum, and really like the grills in these. They have a very cool look, and that's the grill that was used back in the MK2 version. And the headband itself is like a spring steel, and has a little bit of flex this way, and then the head strap is self-adjusting. These headphones come with a 2-meter cable. It's 4-pin mini XLR connections at the headphone end, and into both ear cups, and has a 6.3mm connection at the amp end. And this headphone also comes with a pretty nice carrying case, and I think in the first video I wasn't sure if this was leather or not. I believe this is a synthetic leather, but it is quite nice. It's lined nicely and has good padding in it. The headphones slip in and out real easy. Also comes with a strap to carry the case, and these headphones come with an adapter. Because it's a 6.3mm plug, it has this adapter that goes from 6.3mm down to 3.5mm at your amp. I guess I'll talk about the build quality a little bit. Like every Kennerton headphone I've seen so far, the build quality is exceptional. Just very, very nice looking headphone. You know, not a flaw anywhere in the build quality. Like I said, real leather, real wood, real aluminum. I'm not aware of any plastic. Oh, I think there's a couple little plastic pieces here on it, but other than that, they feel very substantial. And yeah, they are a little bit heavy, and I'll talk about that in a minute. So yeah, I guess I'll talk about that now. Next on my list of things to talk about is comfort. And to be honest with you, these are one of the heavier headphones that I've reviewed. It's 643 grams. I believe the only headphone I've reviewed that's heavier than this would be the Tish Phobos, which I think weighed in about 680 or 90 grams. But to be honest, I have no issues with the weight. They're actually very comfortable. There's not much clamping force, but it's enough they don't fall off if I tip my head. And the large ear pads seem to spread the weight out real well. and the head strap is nicely padded. And I actually find these things very comfortable, and I know the weight is going to be an issue with some of you. Some people can't stand a headphone that's more than like 350, 400 grams. So, you know, if weight is an issue, I would try to, you know, try something else out that weighs this much, or maybe, you know, demo a pair of these. But if heavier headphones don't bother you, they're actually very comfortable. I can wear these for a couple hours straight with no problems whatsoever. Getting into the sound, I'm going to start with the tone balance, and I would describe the tone balance. And I've had these for a couple months, and I've got quite a few hours in with these now. When I did my first impressions, I'd had them a couple weeks, but only had a chance to put in a couple hours of listening time. And over the last few weeks, I've done a lot of listening with these, and to be honest, it's a headphone I love to listen to. Very enjoyable. So anyway, I'll start out with the tone balance, and I would describe the tone balance as being pretty close to neutral. The only thing that I would say deviates from neutral is I would say there's a little bit of bass emphasis in the sub and mid bass, maybe about 3 decibels. Just a little bit stronger than what I would consider neutral. And for a reference of what I do consider neutral, I would say headphones that I would consider pretty much dead neutral would be the Hi-Fi Man Sundara, the Hi-Fi Man Aria, and the Kennerton Thrower with the original stock ear pads on it. I would describe those as being pretty much dead neutral. So this, I would say, just has a slight boost in the bass. Other than that, pretty much neutral. And I would say just a slight warmness in the mid-range that, you know, compared to dead neutral. But anyway, frequency extension on this I would describe as very good. These go quite deep into the sub bass, and I don't hear any roll off at all in the treble. They go as high as, you know, my old ears can hear, so I'm not hearing any roll off in the treble. So like I said, very good frequency extension on both ends. The bass itself I would describe as strong but not boomy at all. Never gets muddy. You know, I would describe it as tight, solid, and very well controlled. Like I said, it's not a bass head headphone, but I don't think a bass head would be totally disappointed with this headphone. You know, like I said, they do have a little bit more bass than what I'd consider neutral, but it's very high quality, very well controlled bass in my opinion. The mids, I would say, once again, I'd say they're slightly on the warm side of neutral. They are very smooth and liquid sounding, almost to the point of being lush, but without giving up any detail. The mids on this, both male and female vocals just sound outstanding. Just very, very smooth, never harsh, absolutely no graininess. Just, you know, just, I've described headphones before as being, you know, rich sounding, kind of a creamy sound, and that's the way the mids are on this. Just about the best mids I've ever heard, as good as any other headphone I've ever heard in the mid-range. The treble, once again, it has good extension. I would call it clear. I would call it clean. Has good sparkle to it. But once again, like the mid-range, it's very smooth and never sounds harsh. And I've never heard the slightest bit of sibilance out of these headphones, just absolutely none. So just very clean mid-range, upper mid-range into the treble. Like I said, just beautiful sounding in my opinion. Getting into detail, resolution, I would say it's exceptional. One of the best I've ever heard. I've only heard a few other headphones that I believe can compete with this headphone in detail. That would be the Hi-Fi Man Aria, the Urzatish Phobos, and the Kennerton flagship Thror, and possibly the Kennerton Magni. I would say those are the only headphones I've ever heard. Well, even some of the cheaper Hi-Fi Man, like the Hi-Fi Man Sandara, has very good detail, but it lacks some bass, it lacks, it's not in the same league as this headphone. So, headphones that are in the league of this, there's only a few of them that have the kind of detail this headphone does. And even though it's very well detailed, I would say it never sounds analytical and it never becomes fatiguing. So, not sure exactly how they pulled that off, how this headphone can be so detailed without sounding analytical or without, it never gets to me. I mean, my ears never feel fatigued with this headphone because it's just such a smooth sound, but yet never lacks any detail. The soundstage on these is very large. They have a very wide soundstage. They have good height to the soundstage and good depth to the soundstage. And I'll do a comparison in a minute, kind of similar to the Kennerton Thror, which has the most three-dimensional layered soundstage that I've ever heard from any other headphone, and this is very close in that respect. And imaging is very precise on these. I would say almost spot on pinpoint imaging. The dynamics, I would say, are very good. They're not the most dynamic headphone I've ever heard, but they're up in the best. They've got very good dynamics, very punchy, good solid punch and hit to the bass, and just all the way through, even in the mid-range, like piano notes and all that, have good level of dynamics and hit to them. So what I'm going to do, and this is what differs in this from my first impressions, is I want to compare these a little bit to a few other headphones to give you an idea where we're at. And I picked 5 headphones that I thought I could compare these to. Most of them similar in price, some a little higher, some a little lower, but anyway, the first headphone I want to compare this to is the Hi-Fi Man Aria. And, it's no secret that I really like the Hi-Fi Man Aria. And the Aria does have a few advantages over this. It's a little bit cheaper at $15.99. It is a bit lighter. It's about a little over 200 grams lighter. And the Aria is one of the most comfortable headphones I have ever worn. I would say the Aria and the Meza Empyrean are probably the most comfortable headphones I've ever tried. And they are both a couple hundred grams lighter than these, so they are more comfortable. But comparing the sound, and the Aria is a headphone that I consider the tone balance to be just about perfect. These match up. They have just as good of extension at both ends, just as well balanced. The only difference in tone balance that I would say is these have a few decibels more hit in the mid bass than the Aria does. The Aria has real good sub bass, which these do too, but they're a little, they don't hit real hard in the mid bass, and these have probably about 2 or 3 decibels more emphasis in the mid bass than the Aria does. So if the Aria comes up a little bit short in your opinion as far as mid bass slam, this could be right where you want to be. The Aria is very, very detailed. Super detailed. I would say it's pretty much a tie between the two. These are just as detailed, but the Aria can sound a little bit dry in the upper mid-range at times to me, and this just has a more, a little bit warmer, more of a lush and creamy mid-range, and I definitely prefer female vocals on this headphone over the Aria. So, you know, I love the Aria, but if I had the choice, I would take this headphone over the Aria without any question. Next on my list is the Urzetish Phobos, which is the flagship of the Urzetish line, and it I think sells for about $22.50, and so it's similar price to this. And the Urzetish Phobos, I really like the sound of it, and in fact, I would say I don't have it here to compare directly. I had to return that after it was loaned to me. But based on memory, I would say this and the Phobos sound very similar to each other. They both are very neutral with a slight emphasis in the mid bass. They both have exceptional detail. They both have very large sound stages. So sound wise, they both have very good extension. Sound wise, I would say this and the Phobos are almost identical. What I do like better about this, I definitely like the looks and design of this better than the Phobos. Phobos has kind of a weird look, and it's not bad in my opinion, but not everyone is in love with the way the Phobos looks. And I would also consider the build quality just to be more precise and more refined than that of the Phobos. So once again, I would pick this over the Phobos. But not taking anything away from it, the sound is exceptional on the Phobos. Very similar with the Odin, but I'd lean towards the Odin because of the appearance and the build quality. Comparing it next to the Meza Empyrean. Meza Empyrean has exceptional build quality. The design of it is exceptional, and it is exceptionally comfortable. But comparing the Odin to the Empyrean, there is no doubt in my mind that the Odin is far more detailed, especially in the mid-range. I don't have the Empyrean here to directly compare. That was returned also, but I know I had, a bit of an issue with the Empyrean. Definitely wasn't the last word in detail, and this headphone is quite a bit more detailed, especially in the mid-range, upper treble. The Meza Empyrean, in my opinion, had a little bit too much bass, and it sacrificed tightness and control for that bass. So this headphone has a little less bass than the Empyrean, but the bass is definitely tighter and better controlled on this headphone. And the Empyrean tended to roll off a little bit in the treble, which this one doesn't. So this headphone definitely has better treble extension than the Empyrean. So once again, if I had my choice, which one I wanted to listen to, I would choose this over the Empyrean in a second. Not to say that the Empyrean's not a great headphone, but I prefer the better detail and the tighter bass on this headphone. Next, I'm going to compare it to the Kennerton Magni, and the Magni is only a $769 headphone, but I did select that as my headphone product of the year for 2019, and I consider it an exceptional deal. The Magni is outstanding for its price, but I consider the Odin better. This is a better headphone than the Magni. The Magni is closed back if that's important, but being an open headphone, the Odin definitely has quite a bit larger soundstage than the Magni does. That's the one weakness of the Magni, being a closed back. The soundstage is a little bit on the small side. These have a very large soundstage, and because of that, I enjoy listening to these more than the Magni. Also, the Magni has probably the best sub bass that I've heard of any headphone at any price. These are very close on the sub bass to the Magni, not quite where they're at, but these definitely have a stronger, harder hitting mid bass than the Magni does. And then the Magni has exceptional detail, which these match in every way. The Magni has very good treble extension, and these do too. So basically, but the Magni is quite a bit lighter than these. So the Magni, you get lightness, you get closed back if that's what you need. With this, you're gaining the much larger soundstage, and you're gaining a little bit harder hitting bass, and in the mid bass, and overall, yeah. Once again, I'd choose this over the Magni, unless I need, if I'm in a situation where I need a closed back headphone and trying to isolate outside noises or keep the music inside the headphone. The last headphone I want to compare this to would be the Kennerton Thrower, Kennerton's flagship headphone. And this has a very similar sound to the Thrower. There's not a whole lot of difference. The Thrower is right now my favorite headphone, the best headphone I've ever heard. But I had to change the ear pads to make it that way. And the Thrower now comes with 2 pairs of ear pads. The second pair can be bought separately. It's called the ECL-02, and I believe they sell for about $62. But if you buy a Thrower now, it comes with both the standard ear pads and the ECL-02 ear pads. With the original ear pads on the Thrower, the Odin actually sounds a little bit warmer and has a little bit stronger bass than the Thrower. So if I had to pick between the two with stock ear pads, I might pick the Odin. I mean, it's pretty close. The Thrower has a little bit bigger, not bigger, but a little bit more three-dimensional, a little bit more layering to the soundstage than the Odin does. But the Odin is very close. It's almost there. The only other headphone I've heard that can compete with the Odin and the Thrower in the three-dimensional layering of the soundstage would be the Urzetish Phobos. But anyway, comparing stock ear pads on both, at times I think I would choose the Odin because it does have a little bit stronger bass and a little bit of a warmer mid-range, little more creaminess and richness to it. But changing the ear pads on the Thrower for the ECL-02, which I believe sell for $62 if I didn't mention that already, it gives the Thrower actually a little bit more bass than the Odin, and the Thrower, after changing those, has became the best headphone that I've heard to date. So, but this has all the detail of the Thrower. It has the very large sound stage. It has the extension at both ends. And, unless I'm using the aftermarket or the ECL-02 ear pads, it actually has a little bit more bass. So basically, I would say this headphone takes you about 90 to 95% of the way to the Thrower. The Thrower is still a little bit better, and the one advantage the Thrower does have is it's about, I think, 150 grams lighter because it uses a carbon fiber diaphragm, and I think that's the reason for the higher price. But so you do get a lighter weight out of the Thrower, and you get, like I said, just a little bit more layering and three-dimensional sound of the soundstage, but this will take you about 90 to 95% of the way to the Thrower for quite a bit less money. So, I mean, in my opinion, if the Thrower's out of your price range, this is a very, good option. You can get almost the same sound at a lower price if the weight doesn't bother you. So I did want to mention those ear pads, the ECL-02 from Kennerton, can also be used on this headphone, and I've got it down to about 5 minutes. I can change them. It's not that difficult. And on the Thrower, I would say they add about 5 decibels of bass emphasis, which puts the Thrower right where I always wanted them to be. They were just a little bit on the thin side at times, and as far as mid bass, and because of that, they weren't my first choice for musics like rock and like electronics, that sort of thing. But they were exceptional with jazz, acoustical, orchestral music. They were exceptional. This headphone is pretty much good at everything. I mean, I can listen to any type of music with this headphone. It's just got the right balance. And I did want to mention, and I had this in my notes, I was going to talk about a little earlier. As far as the equipment I used when I was reviewing this, I was using a Cambridge Audio 540C CD player as a transport only, going into a benchmark DAC1 to do my digital to analog conversion, and then running an analog signal out of there. And most of my review of this headphone was done with either the Audio GD Master 9 or the Felix Audio Echo tube amp, and it sounds superb with both of those. And I also tried this with a couple of other amps, and even the $99 JDS Labs Atom did a very good job with these headphones. They sounded slightly on the dry side. They lacked a little bit of musicality with that amp, but you don't have to spend a fortune on an amp with these headphones. They're pretty easy to drive, and they're not real amp sensitive. I mean, obviously a good amp is going to make them sound a little better, but to be honest, I mean, they were 90% of the way there with the little $99 JDS. And as far as music, I ran quite a variety through here. I ran some rock, I ran stuff like, some dance music, some 80s new wave, ran some Nora Jones, some Sarah McLachlan, some Tori Amos, and a little bit of classical. And in fact, the other night, in fact twice since I've had these, I've listened to an entire George Gershwin album with Rhapsody in Blue and American in Paradise, and just found these incredible with that. Just the detail, the imaging, the soundstage. I mean, I listened to that entire CD all the way through at least twice with this headphone. I enjoyed it that much. So I guess what it comes down to is, do I recommend this headphone? And the answer is yes, without a doubt. This has been one of the most enjoyable headphones I have ever reviewed. I have loved every minute with it. And other than the Kennerton Thrower, I can't think of another headphone that I have heard to date that I would rather listen to than this headphone. I mean, and it's very close with the Thrower. Like I said, this takes you at least 90% of the way there. So just a very well balanced. This headphone has no weaknesses in my opinion, sound wise. The tone balance is just about perfect. The frequency extension, the mids are great, the bass is great, the treble's great, the soundstage is very large, the imaging is very precise. Never do these headphones sound harsh or fatiguing. I've never heard any sibilance whatsoever out of these. In my opinion, the sound is just about perfect. The only flaw this headphone has, in my opinion, is its weight. It is one of the heavier headphones, and so that's the only weakness it has. It doesn't personally bother me, but I know a lot of you don't like heavy headphones. So do I recommend it? Of course I recommend it. I love this headphone and have loved every minute I've spent with it. If weight's a problem, you might want to consider something. The Phobos is even heavier, so I would say if weight is a serious issue, you might want to look at something like the Hi-Fi Manoria, but that's made almost entirely of plastic, and a lot of people don't like that either. It sounds very good, but when you pick it up in your hands, it feels a little bit cheap. You're not going to have that problem with this headphone. When you pick this headphone up, it feels solid, it feels well constructed, it feels like you got something for your money. So yep, top of my list. In fact, if you watch my most bang for the buck video I put out a few days ago. This was at the top of my list of premium headphones. So anyway, I'm going to wrap this up. Once again, this is William from the Headphone Experience. If this video has helped you, please give me a thumbs up. Please subscribe to my YouTube channel, and you're all welcome to join us over at the Headphone Experience on Facebook. Thank you.